Hello and welcome to the 305th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm Matt Perkins. And a flag route across the Harpeth River, but with no red flags on his resume, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
Yeah, no George O'Leary going on here. I'm not faking anything on my resume, so we're good to go there. I'm excited to be back, and we'll let's get this thing rolling, man.
Well, we can't get rolling without the third amigo in the second city. And speaking of faking, a man who never fakes the funk on a nasty dunk, it's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook.
Hey, if we're going to talk about dunks, how about Chris Murray with 30 points last night in the beatdown of Omaha?
Omaha?
There we go. Some Iowa.
Yeah, clearly.
Omaha!
With the Hayden Fry hat still. Love it, Josh. Well, we are going to get into a whole bunch of stuff here tonight here on Illegal Motion Podcast, brought to you by MikeFarrellSports.com and BetOnline.ag. BetOnline remains our presenting sponsor and the number one site in the entire world for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over there at betonline.ag. So head on over to the website, use your mobile device, sign up today, use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, guys, last week, as everyone knows, had a special episode. We got some emails and some notes back from the fans who really appreciate what we did. So I want to thank you guys for sticking with us and just sending your support. Some of you guys were able to donate to the GoFundMes for the different players, and that was also really, really touching to see. So thank you for everyone who continues to support the families of the victims of the tragedy that happened at UVA. Obviously, still with everything that's going on in the news, we saw Colorado Springs this weekend. Gun violence remains in the news, unfortunately, and it's a part of everyday life. But we need to continue, unfortunately, to move, for better or for worse, here forward on the show. And we are going to, we didn't really talk about the Week 11 games last week. And so here we are. We've got 2 weeks of games to look back onto. So we're going to sort of go whip around. What have we seen over the last 2 weeks? And so, Josh, you actually started by asking us, what were sort of the two things that stood out to you over the last 2 weeks? And I'm going to start here because I was in the house for Vandy, Florida this past weekend, and I actually watched every snap of Vandy, Kentucky last weekend. So to me, obviously, well, the thing that's standing out to me is Vanderbilt is back. This Vanderbilt team is really interesting. Back-to-back winning streak, or back-to-back wins in SEC play for the first time since 2019, more than 1,000 days. That's pretty incredible. Beating a ranked Kentucky team on the road, I don't care how bad Will Levis looks in that game. That's still a ranked team with a good offensive line and a solid defense. And then containing Florida enough this past weekend and capitalizing on mistakes. This Vanderbilt team plays hard, Coach, and they play harder every snap to snap than any Vandy team I've seen since the Coach Franklin teams of 2012 and 2013.
And even then, I would say that this team just plays extremely hard because if you look at the stats, it's kind of funny. I was looking at it and saw that Anthony Richardson threw for 400 yards. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, my God, if you were to tell me that Anthony Richardson threw for 400 yards against anybody, that team's probably winning by a lot. And at times, Vanderbilt looked dominant over Florida.
And you know why? Because
they were pushing him around.
They let him do that because they completely negated his running ability in that game. Yeah. And that is – Vanderbilt is going to have to win in the SEC with scheme, and they are starting to win with scheme and smart players and playing hard, and that's the only way you can win at Vanderbilt, and they're starting to do so. Coach, what has been your biggest takeaway over the last 2 weeks?
Well, I will say this. South Carolina really impressed me.
Yeah.
This past weekend, you and I talked about it. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
You came over and got your treats from us.
Buffalo chicken
and
did.
I can't believe that South Carolina – I didn't think South Carolina could score 63 points in practice collectively over the course of the season. But Rattler had the best game he's probably ever had and ever will have against Tennessee, throwing 6 touchdowns. They looked damn near flawless. Tennessee couldn't do much. Hendon Hooker, unfortunately, goes down with the torn ACL, so that's that's sad news. He had such a great career at Tennessee. There was some, and then this whole, another thing that stood out is this whole Lane Kiffin saga. How it's how
he's not going
distraction
to
of a coaching search.
He's not.
But this whole distraction has really affected what this team has done over the last 2 weeks. I mean, they lose a game they probably shouldn't have against Alabama.
Definitely not.
And then they get absolutely curb stomped by Arkansas.
That was embarrassing.
Like, that's the only thing I can look at to explain. It's like, well, this team's gone through a bunch of distractions, and they're not mature enough as a team to handle all of that. So they couldn't quite try to figure that out. The USC UCLA game really impressed me. Caleb Williams has certainly impressed me as one of the nation's top quarterbacks as well. So
40 touchdowns and 3 turnovers this season. He's been outstanding.
Ridiculous.
But that game in a lot of ways came down to who's going to have the ball at the end, and UCLA had it, and DTR threw a pick, and I was honestly shocked that he threw that pick, Josh, because I was pretty convinced that they were going to go down and score, and it was just going to be the kind of the last guy who had the ball. So, but Josh, what stood out to you over the last 2 weeks?
Well, quick shout out to UConn for making a bowl. That happened a couple weeks ago when they beat Liberty. We bumped that for obvious reasons, but I'm actually glad Coach brought up the Pac-12 for a moment, because I've had the most ranked teams out of the Pac-12 now for weeks. I think it's the deepest
Oregon
league.
State, man.
I wanted to talk about 2 teams that will not win the Pac-12, but have really caught my eye. The first is Washington. They're riding a 5-game winning streak. They're up to 9-2 on the season, 6-2 in conference. So just going to miss out on the title game. But
Kalen DeBoer just got an extension a couple hours ago as we record.
Yeah,
there you go.
But in this winning streak, they took down Oregon State, a team that I think very highly of. Then they traveled to Outson and took down the Ducks. And then last week they absolutely drubbed Colorado. They're coming into that always exciting Apple Cup, playing really well. They just got to get past those pesky Wazoo Cougars, and Washington's going to be a double-digit winner and really off to an impressive bowl game, I think. And then the other team I wanted to talk about, they're a team that I kept the faith. I kept them in my poll even after they lost to Washington. To me, that was a totally even matchup. If you're going to rank Washington, you have to rank Oregon State. They've won 5 of their last 6. Their one loss was that Washington game. Last 2 weeks, they've allowed just 17 points. And I know it's Cal and I know it's Arizona State, but 17 points over 2 games that are both absolute blowouts is really impressive, because it's easy to give up points at the end of the game with your second, third, fourth stringers in. They take on Oregon. It's a massive game for Oregon. Oregon's going to have all the pressure on them. It's in Outson, but the Beavers are a really good team that would love nothing more than to win their rivalry and totally disrupt Oregon's dreams of sneaking into the playoffs here at the 11th hour.
I'm excited to talk about the Civil War a little bit later. One other thing, though, I want to get to, Coach. One thing that stood out to me is just the dysfunction in the ACC, and that is capped with Georgia Tech beating UNC. I mean, come on. Like, hey, we got to give.
Are we
props
surprised? No,
we got. No, first of all, we have to give props to this Georgia Tech team that has completely turned it around. Jeff Collins.
They're an upset away. They're an upset away over your dogs from a bowl, Coach.
I mean, I love a good upset, but the Ramblin' Wreck are not ready for the Dogs' defense. But
hey, there was a Florida State team that thought the same over like a 3-7 Georgia Tech team, and they had a walk-off kick 6.
But Coach, the rest of the ACC. I mean, it's in shambles. Clemson, I mean, they beat a downtrodden Miami team, but they are not impressive whatsoever. I mean, their defense is solid, but when I look at them going up against the rest of the ACC, well, the rest of the ACC offenses are junk. Like, this conference has fallen off so hard here at the end of this season. I don't see a path for Clemson to get to the playoff, even if they win out.
No, I mean this conference is complete and utter garbage. I mean, Wake Forest is falling apart.
Yep.
UNC can't stop a little league team. Louisville is like near the top of their division. That says a lot.
Louisville's Jekyll and Hyde. Louisville one week, they look like the greatest show on turf, and the next week they're the Jets.
Yeah, exactly. Then I mean, it's just every team you talk about is just there's some massive gaping hole where water's rushing in and flooding their program and just completely derailing them. NC State fell apart. Miami is, well, they're just god awful. Syracuse fell apart after a couple injuries. They're not very deep, but they had a good run for a minute. And Clemson is just paper mache, man. They look tough. They look impressive. They come out there, and then all of a sudden you're just like, well, okay, these guys aren't really that tough at all.
So one of my new bugaboos has been noticing people in the media who say Clemson instead of Clemson. They say Clemson, like it sounds like they have a P in there, and I'm starting to notice it. Clemson, and I'm starting to notice it more and more, and it's driving me absolutely insane. Okay, Josh, we're pretty much out of time. What's your one last thing?
Clemson.
My one last thing actually comes from a few weeks ago. We just couldn't quite fit it in, and it just kind of got embarrassingly long. But I wanted to give a shout out to former Iowa defensive coordinator Bill Brashear. He passed away a few weeks ago at age 93. He was Hayden Fry's defensive coordinator for 17 years. They were lifelong friends. He's like the only person from Hayden Fry's amazing staff to never take a head coaching job. Bob Stoops summed it up pretty perfectly. He said, quote, "He was awesome." Among the coaches that were on that defensive staff with Bill Brashear were the Bob Stoops that I just mentioned. His linebacker coach for a while was Barry Alvarez. His defensive line coach for a while was Dan McCarney at Iowa State. He had Mark Stoops way back as a grad assistant many, many moons ago. It's just kind of end of an era. Fry passed away a few years ago, and now his defensive coordinator passed away a few years ago.
Did Burt work under him too? Or did he just play under him?
He would have played under him. I don't know if they would have overlapped any. I
can't remember if Brett joined the staff in Iowa when Hayden was still there, or if that was in like the first or second year of the Ferentz era. But hats off. That's a really, really nice note there, Josh. So let's the next thing though, guys, that we're going to get to before we talk about what could happen for some title games is the FCS playoff is here, and that is for us. Anyone who's been listening to us for more than just this season knows that we love the FCS playoffs. And so the bracket is out. It dropped, a couple hours before we tape here on Tuesday nights. So we're going to, let's run down the bracket quick, Josh. And we are going to start with the team that I have picked to win the title the last few years, haven't done so, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. They are the 1 seed for a reason. They have an absolutely dominant team. They're in a really interesting region, though, with Holy Cross as the other seeded team that gets that first round bye. We've got Delaware and St. Francis of Pennsylvania. The winner of that game will take on South Dakota State. And the winner of New Hampshire, Fordham, will take on Holy Cross. And the team, you need to say, okay, I'm the guy from the Granite State. I want to talk about New Hampshire. No, I want to talk about Fordham. Fordham's passing offense is unreal. They have 20% more passing yards than the second team in the country in FCS. This is a team that's averaging over 420 yards a game passing. And that's going to be really, really interesting, especially stylistically, going up against New Hampshire. New Hampshire, obviously, in that powerhouse of a CAA league, which is much more known as a defensive, grinded-out league. Fordham's just going to try to air it out. Josh, for me, that is a really interesting matchup in the first round in terms of how styles make fights. We're going to see, which team dictates style. I think it's going to be which team actually wins the game.
Yeah, what's scary when you look at Fordham, too, is you mentioned all their passing stats. They also have a 1,000-yard back in Trey Sneed. So it just feels like New Hampshire a little bit bigger league, CAA, a little bit more well respected. But I think they might get smacked by this Fordham team with their high octane offense, and Fordham should be really hungry for a win, because if they win, they take on a team from their own conference, Holy Cross. They're going to want to play spoiler to Holy Cross. Looking at that Delaware St. Francis game, Delaware, again, a CAA team. These teams get a lot of respect.
So for those of you who actually aren't, FCS people, two major conferences, the two major powers in the FCS, the Missouri Valley Football Conference, that's where your North Dakota States and South Dakota States come from. They're the SEC of FCS.
And SoCon, obviously. Oh, wait.
The Colonial is effectively the Big Ten. You've got New Hampshire, Richmond, Albany, like some of these really, really solid teams.
Yeah. James Madison came out of the this Colonial. But so the interesting thing with that Delaware St. Francis game is Delaware is limping in. They've lost 3 of their last 4, and their one win was against Monmouth, who, they were under 500. So you're not learning too much from that game. I think overall, looking at this region, I really don't see any of these teams in South Dakota's league. I know Holy Cross went undefeated this year, but Holy Cross is from the Patriot League, and there's a reason why an undefeated team is going to be the 8 seed, is because it's the Patriot. The Patriot is probably the American.
I think that's generous. I would say that. I'd say you're probably closer to CUSA.
Maybe,
it's not a great league. But it's also interesting that they're seeded 8th, but they're actually ranked 6th in the polls. And so, the committee seeding this doesn't respect them as much as, a media poll does, which would make sense. Media always loves the undefeated narrative. Yeah. We got to keep moving on, though. I want to move down to the
last thing I want to say about Holy Cross is they have incredible individual talent. Their quarterback, Matthew Solka, also their leading rusher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk William & Mary, the 5 seed, Montana State, the 4 seed down, in the 4-5 region. However, I think the matchup of the first round here, Weber State, North Dakota. Weber State has been a power, but they haven't had the best season, but they've got as much talent, Josh, as any team in FCS.
They do. I just, I like their coach. I talked about how their coach should get some looks at a bigger time job. It's just been a hard year at times for them.
To be fair, we're calling a 9-2 a hard year. So this is the standard, though.
But the problem is, and this is going to be a great analogy. You guys are going to love this one. Weber State this year was Penn State. They finished 6-2. They just never matched the level of Sacramento State or Montana State.
Yeah.
So they're a really nice team. Weber State's a nice team, but they just were third best in a really good conference, and I'm not sure that's enough.
They're one of those teams, though, that they could catch a spark and really make some things interesting.
Yeah, and so to me, Coach, they are. I think they're probably the most dangerous of the unseeded teams, because we know they have that talent, and we know that they have the coaching, the coach in place who can do some big things. And so I think now that would set up a matchup against Montana State in the second round, who team we've already seen beat them before and looks really, really strong right now. Seems like they are peaking at the right time of the season.
Yeah.
So, and that's why Montana State is my pick to win this region. I loved them last year in the playoffs. I kind of joined the hype train. They just hosted game day against a pretty 7-4, a nice Montana team.
You know what? Best Montana team. It's been in a minute, because they've actually had some down years recently.
Yeah, but they took those Grizz to the woodshed. No pressure with game day there, 55-21. Their last 4 games, you want to talk about clicking on offense, here are their last 4 point totals: 43, 41, 72, 55. You feel pretty good about that.
Bobcats got it going on, man.
Yeah, and all those games will be in Bozeman the way the home field advantage works. So,
yeah. Talking home field advantage, let's move over to the 2-7 part because Sac State, who we also just mentioned, another team who's dominant at home, and I feel very strong about them sort of running away with this quadrant. We've seen good Paladin teams, good Furman teams before. We've seen powerful offenses out of Incarnate Word, but I don't think anyone can match what Sac State has over here, Coach.
No, they can't. They really can't. I mean, it's they're explosive, man. They're just
absolutely. And if you look at when it comes to big conference football, FCS football, Josh, you got Sac State, you got Richmond. Everyone else is from some of these lesser conferences over here and down this quadrant of the bracket, which is why I really like Sac State.
West Coast FCS football is really kind of like a mixture of a more physical brand of Pac-12, if that's possible.
No, Coach, that actually makes sense because they use a lot of they're still spreading it out scheme-wise a little bit more, but they are incorporating more design run. So
there's a lot of RPO game here, a lot of. I really going back and looking at these highlights of Sac State and Weber State. These games are super competitive. Eastern Washington's no slouch. You've got Cal Poly. You've got different teams in there that really can give you a nice run in preparation for the playoffs. So I feel like any of these teams from out west are very, very much geared up for that.
And that's the last thing I want to say about this region. Coach said out west. Every other team in this region is from either the Eastern time zone or Central time zone. Lots of long trips out to Sac State. You can't overlook that. It's going to play a factor.
You've got one Central time zone, then you've got all Eastern. You have Elon from North Carolina, Furman from South Carolina, Richmond from Virginia, and Davidson from North Carolina. So you've got two regional games, and then they both have to travel. One
either
has to travel to Texas.
And the other one's
you should watch Incarnate Word, though. Their quarterback, Lindsey Scott Jr.
Yes.
Coach, you like offense. Have you seen his stat lines? Can I introduce you to 3,762 passing yards, 4 interceptions, and he's had a couple touchdowns on the year. He's thrown 50 of them.
I feel like I feel like they move the ball pretty good.
See, that's the thing, though, Josh. Those are really impressive stats, right? Lindsey Scott, what did he have? 3,791 pass yards.
Lindsey Scott.
Tim DeMorit from Fordham, 4,561 passing yards.
They upset Nevada, but I wouldn't really call it an upset because Incarnate Word was the better team.
I wouldn't call it. Well, considering how much Nevada lost from last year's squad. Quickly, we've got the North Dakota State Samford. North Dakota State 9-2 on the season, but one of those losses was an FBS loss. I'm blanking on which FBS team they lost to, but I think it was a Power 5 team. But North Dakota State, they also lost to South Dakota State. One of the big reasons South Dakota State is the number one team in the country. And frankly, we've been talking about it for a while. South Dakota State has been knocking on the door. Josh, do you think this is the year? Josh, do you think this is the year that North Dakota State doesn't even make the Final Four?
Ooh, that's an intriguing question.
Because I think this Samford team has some intriguing things around it. They're 10-1. They have a really well-rounded team, but I'm not.
What I like about the Samford team is they can really kind of matched up against a North Dakota State team. They can get them fits by spreading them out. They have athletes. They have a good quarterback. They play a more physical brand of football than I've seen from this Samford program in quite some time. And this is probably the most physical Samford team I've seen. And they're, Chris Hatcher does a really good job over there.
The interesting thing though for Samford is if Idaho takes care of Southeastern Louisiana, which they should just based on their conferences and pedigree of the conference, but Idaho brings with them a really special wide receiver, Hayden Hatton, 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's a special kid. Idaho has had some just really impressive games including one of their losses is about as impressive as you could get. They went to Sacramento State and went toe-to-toe with them, losing ultimately just by a field goal. So the Vandals, no slouches. This is a really, really rough region for a 3 seed. They did no favors for North Dakota State. Obviously, they'll get to play in Fargo, which favors them. But Montana is not, going to be scared. They play in a major conference. Southeast Missouri State is a conference foe of North Dakota State, so they're used to playing them. Samford coach talked about why they're good, and Idaho, I just talked about why they're good. So this is not stamp it like South Dakota State. This is going to be a tough trip for the Bison, and I think even if they do make the Final Four, this is going to be a bumpier. Yeah, this is going to be a bumpier road because as the 3 seed, that means in the semifinals, they're playing a team on paper that's better than them, and most likely Sacramento State. So, so my semis were South Dakota State, Montana State, North Dakota State. I think is going to win it and survive, and then Sacramento State. I know that's chalk. I know people don't want to hear that. I've got South Dakota State winning their semifinal. I have Sac State though. Finally, a bridge too far for North Dakota State, losing my championship game. Jackrabbits and Sac State. Matt, I'm joining you. Sac State or South Dakota State, wire to wire, has been the most impressive team for me. They should have beaten my Hawkeyes week 1. I've got Jackrabbits winning the national title.
Yeah, I've got Jackrabbits all the way. But I have to go with an unseeded team. I always have to go with one unseeded team to make a run.
Ooh,
so
boy.
You can probably guess who it is. It's Weber State. I think I think the fact that they have that loss against Montana State, it's a conference team. Always have to beat a conference team twice. So give me Weber State unseeded. Besides that, I'm feeling pretty chalky, and I've got South Dakota State over Sac State in the title.
My unseeded sleeper are those Vandals. I wish they could have all their games at the Kibbe Dome. Who doesn't like that? But they're kind of an unseeded. Yeah, they're kind of an unseeded team that I think is a lot better than their 7-4 record.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an unseeded team to watch out for. I'm gonna say, obviously Weber State I think is way better than their unseeded ranking, but I think Fordham is a team that needs to be taken seriously. I think they're gonna make a run. I don't think they're going to get past South Dakota State to make it to the Final Four, but I do think they give it a go, honestly. And I think Samford gives it a go from that side of it. I think they upset North Dakota State. I think it's just a weird matchup there. Mm-hmm. And Samford's going to be battle tested after getting past Josh's sleeper team, the Idaho Vandals, coming from the South bracket. Actually, whatever bracket you want to decide that is, the lower right quadrant. I'm gonna
the 2-7 quadrant. The 2-7 quadrant.
The 27 quadrant. I'm gonna go with Incarnate Word coming out of there.
Oh, okay.
I'm feeling a little. I'm feeling a little less chalky here. Probably need
Coach
some
is
chalk.
feeling. With that offense, Coach is feeling borderline offensive.
I'm very offensive. And then the Bobcats coming out, despite Weber State's best.
All right.
Despite Weber State's best efforts,
Coach, I love it.
William and Mary's going to be all over the winner of Eastern Kentucky Gardner Webb, and I think William and Mary Montana State will be a phenomenal game. I think Montana State gets the better of them. And then my national champion. I'm going to say the Jackrabbits are going to beat Incarnate Word in the championship game.
I like that, Coach. I like that a lot.
All right.
And one interesting note: today was or yesterday, I should say, Monday was effectively portal day for FCS players. All the dudes ended their season, and they all went into the portal. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. You guys thought last year was crazy in the portal.
How many did Iowa get?
You haven't seen nothing yet. I mean, no one's accepting anyone yet. Obviously,
hopefully somebody's offensive coordinator.
Oh my goodness. It's going to be insane. And just a note, if there are any players out there listening and you are hitting the portal, just remember 70% of players who hit the portal last year did not find a new home.
Yeah.
So, with that, though, Josh, one of your favorite things to do every year is to run us through some conference title game scenarios. Josh, you have 8 minutes. The floor is yours. You can ask questions. You can go ahead and just rant. I don't care. But it's all yours.
All right. Well, I like to crunch the numbers. I'm just going to go alphabetically by conference. So we'll start with the American, and we have 4 teams sniffing around. We got Cincinnati at 6-1, Tulane at 6-1, Central Florida at 5-2, Houston at 5-2. These are, of course, their conference records. So the American tiebreaker is the highest ranked team in the CFP poll, which was just released. Like 2 hours ago, maybe? Something about that?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at the most recent
that was released about 2.5 hours ago as we are here on Tuesday night. But the polls, this top 4 stayed the same. LSU up to number 5, USC up to number 6, with Tennessee in a free fall. I believe Alabama is 7. You guys know that Alabama is somehow going to end up in the college football playoff despite not winning their own division.
So for the American title race, Tulane is 19th in that poll. Central Florida is 22nd, and Cincinnati is 24th. And Houston is nowhere in it. So what does this mean? So that's the tiebreaker. So with Houston not being ranked at all, and Houston also lost to Tulane, they're effectively done, even though they could win and get to 6-2. So Cincinnati and Tulane, they play this weekend. The winner is automatically in. That's locked in. And so then we get to this weird thing with Central Florida. Central Florida lost to Navy, which makes this kind of weird. If they had beaten Navy, Central Florida would have already clinched. So whoever loses in the Cincy-Tulane game is 6-2. And if Central Florida beats South Florida, which we would expect, they'll also be 6-2. So in that scenario, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to be kind of a terrible, oh crap, that's sort of unfair. Cincinnati's already behind Central Florida. So if Cincy loses, they're done. If Tulane loses, they'll probably slide past Central Florida. So that's why basically it's Central Florida wins, they're in. And the winner of the Cincy-Tulane game is also in. We get some weird scenarios, though, that if South Florida were to beat Central Florida, things would get kind of weird. So Cincy-Tulane winner in and hosting automatically. Central Florida would be 5-3, so their record would be out. The Cincy-Tulane loser would be 6-2, and therefore still in the running. And if Houston beats Tulsa, they'd be 6-2. Then we get back to the ranking scenario. So it's kind of a strange thing. The simplest thing is assume Central Florida will blow out awful South Florida, and then assume that Central Florida will either be traveling to New Orleans or Cincinnati. And this is why, as bad as the Big Ten West is, it's nice to have divisions, because this whole jumbled up thing is really freaking annoying. So with that in mind, anything about the American title race intrigue either of you gentlemen?
Honestly, Tulane's letdown here at the end of the season has kind of put a little bit of cold water on everything for me. That was such a fun story, and I was really enjoying that.
They had one narrow loss, and then they came back and obliterated SMU.
It's still a letdown.
All right. Okay. Well, the next conference is way easier. It's the ACC. Clemson and North Carolina is already set. Yep. The Big 12. The Big 12 is all but set. TCU is already locked in. Kansas State is in with a win over their rival Kansas. Texas is in with a win over Baylor and a Kansas State loss. Yep. You guys see Texas sneaking in here at the wire?
Kansas is going to give it all that they can, but I think that Leopold also just signed a contract extension. They gave it to him before the game because they knew it would look weird to give it to him after the game, after they inevitably lose to Kansas State, who is locked in. And guys, also this show right here, we need some props. All three of us had K-State in the Big 12 title game this year. I don't think there is an outlet out there that was as bullish on K-State as the three of us here at Illegal Motion, and we are vindicated, my friends.
There we go.
Vindicated, bro.
Not vindicated. Our takes on Sonny Dykes. We won't revisit those.
Big Ten.
Those aren't. Yeah.
Big Ten. Let's get to the Big Ten.
Big Ten.
Hold
on.
You're eating on my clock. I got 2 minutes left.
Kansas State does absolutely get into the Big 12 title game. All right, go ahead.
There we go. Love it. Big Ten, the East is pretty simple. The winner of the game between Ohio State and Michigan is in. The West, Iowa has the clearest path. If they win Black Friday against Nebraska, they're in. If Iowa loses to Nebraska and Purdue beats Indiana, Purdue is in. If Iowa and Purdue lose, but Illinois beats god-awful Northwestern, Illinois will still get to go. If everyone that I just mentioned loses, Iowa still actually goes to the title game because they have the tiebreaker over Wisconsin and Minnesota. So the winner of the Axe game would join Iowa at 5-4, but the Hawks have the head-to-head over Purdue and then Wisconsin and Minnesota. So
a 5-4 in conference Iowa would be the most Big Ten West thing of all time. Also, having watched Nebraska last week, Josh, if Iowa can't beat Nebraska, I mean, that offense is historically inept. It's going to be
don't jinx things.
It's going to be the winner of the game versus Iowa. I feel very confident in that right now. But hey, you never know. Oh, speaking of which, coaching openings, it's all but confirmed. Jim Leonard. It will be we'll have the interim tag taken off of him on Sunday. So
that's what winning the Heroes Trophy does.
Apparently, it gets the interim tag taken off you because you get those 12 extra bowl practices.
There we go. Conference USA, UTSA, our Roadrunner buddies. We love them. Meep. They've already clinched home field for the title game. They will be joined by North Texas if they beat Rice. If
Does Jeff Traylor get a look at any of these jobs?
Ooh. He should.
No, he should, but he just signed a big extension last offseason, and he's a guy who is very loyal to the state of Texas. He would not leave UTSA for another job unless it was a Power 5 job within the state of Texas. That is the only way I see him ever leaving UTSA.
There we go. So Western Kentucky, they will be the ones going to San Antonio if they beat Florida Atlantic and North Texas loses. Kind of a side note, North Texas plays Rice and Western Kentucky plays FAU. Both those teams, FAU and Rice, are 5-6. So there's some weird upset potential because both those teams are going to try and make a bowl game. The MAC was decided today. Toledo had clinched the West a while ago. Ohio needed to win their game tonight here in Maction. They did, which avoids kind of an interesting scenario that could have happened with Buffalo, but that's all taken off the table now. Buffalo will reschedule their game against Akron during title week as they try and get to bowl eligibility. The Mountain West is also set. Boise State, they clinched last Saturday with their win over Wyoming, and Fresno clinched a little bit earlier in the season thanks to having a tiebreaker over San Diego State. The title game will be Fresno traveling to Boise. The Pac-12 is another divisionless train wreck. USC has clinched the title spot, the title game. So who will they face? Oregon has the easiest path they just got to win the Civil War.
Easier said than done this year.
Yeah.
Which we will talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Washington is in if they win the Apple Cup and Oregon State wins and either UCLA or Utah loses. The Bruins face Cal and Utah faces Colorado. Utah is still alive. Utah is in with a win over Colorado. Washington wins the Apple Cup. Oregon State wins the Civil War, and UCLA takes care of business against Cal.
And Georgia wins clean old-fashioned hate.
Yeah. So
and Wisconsin ties for the Axe.
Out of all that train wreck, this is not who do you think will win. Who do you want?
And Hawaii wins.
Who do you want USC to play?
Who do I want them to play?
What would be the most fun matchup? Out of the teams that are still alive?
Oregon or Washington. I like Washington just because I like Washington. I like watching Washington play. And
you also want to see Penix go up against that defense.
That's really what I'm here for. I want to see Penix throw for like 650 yards and 7 touchdowns. And so the team they can do that best against is USC. No.
And still lose by 3.
Somehow. They would absolutely still lose to 3. It would be 66-63.
Yeah. Coach, any Pac-12 opinions? Nah, you never watch these games. You're asleep. You're asleep on the couch.
Yeah, God, I am passed out. I did watch the USC UCLA game though, most of it.
Nice.
When I switched over from Tennessee, I would like to see Oregon. Honestly, I think they're one of the more complete teams in the conference. And,
I don't want to see. Let's just put it this way: I don't want to see Utah. So we've already seen USC Utah. I don't need to see it again, and I don't want to. I feel like we know who Utah is at this point. I feel like I can get a little bit more out of Oregon or Washington.
If it's not Oregon, Washington, but
and I'm saying not Washington, Oregon. I mean, obviously my dream was UCLA, but my dreams get crushed like they do every day.
Yeah, oof.
Living in America.
Every time I play on FanDuel, my dreams get crushed.
Yeah. All right, the last two.
I only play at betonline.ag, Coach, and my dreams are never lost there. Never lost.
The last two conferences down there in Coach's land, the SEC, that one's already set, Georgia, LSU. The Sun Belt, though, we got an interesting thing.
LSU family.
Yeah. Coastal's clinched because James Madison is barred from any postseason appearances. So even if the Dukes beat Coastal 500-0 in their final game of the season, it doesn't matter. So that's kind of always the dumb, stupid rule that we hate. The West has 2 teams at 6-1, Troy and South Alabama. And sadly, they actually don't play each other in the finale. They already played. Troy won head-to-head. So if Troy beats Arkansas State, they face Coastal. If Troy loses and South Alabama beats Old Dominion, South Alabama goes. If they both lose, Troy also moves on. Kind of a weird fluke. Arkansas State is dead last in the West, and Old Dominion is dead last in the East. So neither has anything to play for. So it would take a just absurd, colossal letdown at the final moment by Troy or South Alabama to drop their game and spoil an opportunity to make the.
So it's going to be Coastal versus Troy is really what it boils down to.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah.
And I picked Troy preseason, so
yeah.
Coach, go Chanticleers.
We're already way over in this segment, but I
know.
But whatever. I have something I have to ask Coach about because Coach, like there was a while where Arkansas State was one of the best, one of the strongest group of 5 teams year in.
Butch Jones, baby.
What? Your cousin used to coach there. What on earth has happened? Because that program has become a straight dumpster fire.
Well, you know who the head coach is, right?
I mean, it's Butch, but like, is it just Butch? Is like that? Like, I don't.
I mean, they started going downhill a little bit when Blake Anderson was dealing with some of those health issues that he was dealing with and stuff with his wife too. And so they started kind of going downhill then, and then he left for Utah State, or he took a year off and then went to Utah State, I believe, right? And then they hired Brick by Brick, and they just quit getting recruits. The conference got better with Coastal, Appalachian State, Georgia Southern got better. Now James Madison enters. You got more people fighting for the same batch of Southern recruits. So
even
it's just a combination of
Troy, South Alabama have up their game. Like,
they have.
Everyone down there is leapfrogging them, and it's been kind of crazy to watch. Just from the outside.
Change. They just need to change. I mean, Butch Jones is he's a walking cheesy motto guy. Like he's like a Pez dispenser for cheesy mottos.
He is a walking cliche in every single way. So,
and I mean the thing, just tying a bow on it. The thing about it is we sometimes remember like, oh man, they were winning title after title after title. They had that dynasty in the Sun Belt. Their last title from that dynasty was 2016. So it's been a minute.
Yeah, I guess like at least it felt like at least like 2018, 2019, they were like in
the conference got
every
better.
Season at least.
Let's just be honest. The conference got better, and then they downgraded head coach when.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a giant step down. All right, It's time for us though to move on to spread formations, picking the biggest games.
We gotta go fast
against the spread, gentlemen. Last week we didn't pick any games on the season. Coach is 40-28. Josh is 38-30. I'm 35-33. You're in the money, baby. Just listen here. We are going to start with the game. It is Michigan at Ohio State. Ohio State, Josh, is a 7.5-point favorite at home. The over/under is 57. You are the man with the Big Ten blog here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Blake Corum, got banged up, didn't play most of the second half. His status, they say he's good to go, but it was a pretty nasty knee that it looked like. Without him, that's a huge piece away from Michigan's offense. And I got to be honest, J.J. McCarthy hasn't shown me much at all this season. I don't like his ball security. Against Illinois, all they needed was a field goal. He threw a couple really ill-advised passes on the final drive. One got tipped at the line and could have, maybe even should have, if Illinois' secondary had been a little bit more on it, picked off, and then Illinois wins the game. I've kind of been out on JJ for most of the season, and I don't like Michigan in this spot. I think Ohio State covers. Ohio State is the real deal.
Coach.
Yeah, this game's in the shoe to boot. They're pissed off from last year. People are doubting them.
Was that an intended pun?
It's in the shoe.
It's in the shoe.
No, he said in the shoe to boot.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even. Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah.
All right.
Score one for the.
Yeah, Coach. So you're on the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm on the Buckeyes. Yeah, they're gonna roll, dude.
This is dangerous because I'm on the Buckeyes too, and not just that though. CJ Stroud has his Heisman moment. This is the game that he's going to go big. I'm talking 5 touchdowns, 330, 340 yards, no turnovers. I think that OSU is starting to put everything together. Jim Knowles' defense is finally coming together.
Do you remember after that scare last week against Maryland?
Yeah. But
I think it was 33.
I think OSU. I think it's OSU's time. MikeFarrellSports.com. A great article from one of our columnists, Alex Bryan, on how and why this will be CJ Stroud's Heisman moment. Make sure you check that out over at MikeFarrellSports.com. One of our featured articles. So yeah, all three of us here on the Buckeyes heading over to the Palmetto Bowl. South Carolina's at Clemson. Clemson's a 14.5-point favorite. Clemson is a 14.5-point favorite at home. Josh, over under 52 points. Where are you at after watching Spencer Rattler turn into freaking NCAA 14 quarterback on like easy mode?
Well, I got a slight confession to make. A few weeks ago, Clemson was 7-point favorites against Louisville.
Whoa.
And Louisville had just won 4 straight games. And I was like, Louisville's kind of frisky. They could hang around in that game. They can find a way to somehow lose by a field goal. No. Clemson still has that defense, and just South Carolina's been very erratic because what did they do a week before beating Tennessee? They scored 6 points in the swamp.
Oh, they get freaking destroyed in the swamp.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Clemson because it's going to be a classic letdown by South Carolina. They're all believing they can win the rivalry for the first time in 38 million years, and they're going to get just absolutely deflated.
Coach.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to really. It's hard to pick for Clemson and against Clemson. So I really don't know. South Carolina, you don't know what you're going to get there.
Coach, I mean that's why our friends out in the desert or our friends over at betonline.ag put the lines where they do, because that's why half the money's on one side, half the money's on the other side, and that's what makes it so tough.
That's how the cookie crumbles. Give me Clemson and the under on this one. This is going to be an ugly game.
Oh, yeah. See, Coach, you and I are on the same wavelength here. I am hammering the under here. I think this is like a 23-10 kind of game. I think there's just going to be mistakes. Both teams are going to come out super tight, or South Carolina's going to come in overjuiced. Clemson's going to have to be woken up after a quarter and a half on offense, and it's just going to be a rock fight with sloppy turnovers. Like, I could see this being like a 5, 6, 7 turnover game, just some ugly, ugly crap going down there in the Palmetto State. Civil War, Josh. Oregon, 3-point favorite on the road at Oregon State. You love the Beavers. Over-under here is 58.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I was running through the things I liked from the last few weeks, and I mentioned Washington and Oregon State, I tongue-twisted myself. I mentioned that Oregon played Oregon State this week in Outson. I was thinking about Washington was playing at Outson a few weeks ago, and I doubled up on that. Yeah, the game is in Corvallis, so I apologize for misspeaking earlier. I absolutely adore this Oregon State team, and maybe it's because they're like reminiscent of Iowa, where they're awesome defense, maybe not always the greatest offense, but I just want to shower Oregon State with their incredible schedule. Beat Boise, they're in the Mountain West title game. Beat Fresno, they're in the Mountain West title game. Beat Montana State, one of the best teams in FCS. Lost by a field goal to USC, turned that game into a slobber knocker 17-14. They had their one clunker on the road in elevation at Utah. Hey, every team
that
has
happens.
A clunker. Look at
a lot of teams going to Utah and lose. Rice Eccles is the loudest stadium in the country.
They regained their footing, ripped off 3 straight against Stanford, Washington State, and Colorado. I know 2 of those teams are awful, but Washington State, they are a nice team. Washington State's won 7 games this year.
Oregon State's been awful for decades. So
yeah. Then they went to Seattle.
Good win.
Went to Seattle, only lost by a field goal. And then the last 2 weeks, 38-10 over Cal, 31-7 over Arizona State, obliterated those 2 weak opponents. I'm leading to this. I have been a believer in Oregon State all season long. Give me the points. I have them pulling the upset.
All right, Josh, making my Washington title game dreams come true against USC. We will see, because we'll talk about the Apple Cup here in a little bit, though. First, Coach.
Yeah, I was gearing up for you to say, I lead up to this to say, give me Oregon. No.
Yeah, they're going to pull the Corso on us.
That would have been hilarious. So I'm taking the Ducks here, -3. If it was a bigger line, I would take the points here, but I'm going to take the Ducks -3. I think they have a bounce back game here. And I say bounce back. They won last week, but I will say they're going to play themselves. They got a lot to play for. They're going to get the Big 12. They're going to get the Pac-12 title game here. Maybe even the Big 12 title game if they're lucky. So, Matt,
I'm taking the under in Corvallis. I don't know. I see it as a coin flip game, but I know it's going to be low scoring because it's going to get gnarly in Corvallis. So I'm second game in a row. Give me the under. Let's go to the Governor's Cup. Kansas State. Kansas State has to win this. Kansas State win. They're into the Big 12 title game. 11.5-point favorite at home. Over under 62.5. Josh.
Yeah, this one is unfortunately a business that Kansas State has to win. They want to be in the Big 12 title game. So, rivalry week, they should have already been focused. Chance of the Big 12 title game, they should have already been focused for that too. You add those two together, I think they're going to be doubly focused. I think they take care of business. I don't think they absolutely obliterate their rival, but I think they win by about 14 points and cover.
All right, so Josh likes to cover, Coach.
Yeah, I do too. I like the cover here. They're a much more physical team. This is a tough matchup for the Jayhawks. Albeit Jayhawks impressive run this season to really just kind of make a. They're going bowling for the first time in a while.
I will say one thing. I will say, man. I mean, those Kansas kids play hard. They might be playing hard, knowing their coach is going to be there. He's been suspect of a lot of rumors that he would be going. He's been tied to Nebraska. He's been tied to Wisconsin. He's been tied to some of these open jobs. He's doubling down. He's staying. I could see these kids fighting hard for him. One thing I do see is a lot of points here. I'm taking the over 62.5.
I heard he's staying because he's a big fan of basketball and loves going to Fog Allen.
Well, I mean, you know what? If that's what floats his boat, that's what floats his boat. Good for him, I suppose. You know what? I'm very tangent. I'm very happy he's staying. I'm very happy he's staying. This is the best outcome for all parties involved. Because if he can truly build, because he's someone that can win anywhere. We've seen it. I'm glad he is actually going to really stay and really build something here at Kansas. They're killing it in the portal. I'll already tell you that. They're going to be one of the most active teams in the portal. It might be a little boom or bust here for a minute, but he is going to build something there, assuming he does stick around, because now he's not going to Nebraska. He's not going to Wisconsin. Those are the two jobs he was tied to. So I'm very happy he is staying at Kansas.
I heard Brian Ferentz is going to Nebraska. Did you get my official pick of Kansas State? Because that's
yes, you did. Yes, we did. Let's talk about the Jules Shillelagh, one of my favorite words in Gaelic. Notre Dame at USC. USC is only a 5-point favorite at home in the Coliseum with an over-under at 64. Josh, it surprises me how much the books like Notre Dame here, as a one-loss USC team at home is only a 5-point favorite over them.
Yeah, I think that's a credit to what Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame's done. I mean, when they started out 0-2 with that loss to Marshall, they were a butt of many a jokes. Then they got to 3-2 and then lost to Stanford, and they returned to being a butt of many a jokes. But they haven't lost since that Stanford team. Their offense has really come alive, no more so than dropping 35 on Clemson. Aided, of course, by a pick six.
Clemson.
Yeah. So that 5 makes me nervous. If it had been a little bit more, I would have loved to take the points. If it had been a little bit less, I would have taken USC. But 5's making me nervous. So I'm going to play to a strength, which is USC's offense, and Notre Dame's offense has also come alive. They're not the offense that we laughed at earlier in the season. I think nice weather, sunny LA. I see that 64 getting toasted.
Coach.
Yeah, I'm going to take USC -5 and the over.
We are all on the over. It's going to end up 17-10.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
3-2.
It's going to be a game Brian Ferentz loves.
It's going to be a Frank Beamer special. All right, Apple Cup, another one of the great rivalries in the sport of college football. Washington at Washington State. Huskies a 1.5 favorite on the road, over under 61. Again, Josh, I mean, Washington really has something to play for here.
Yeah, you just don't walk into Martin Stadium after Thanksgiving in the Palouse. There could be 5 feet of snow on the ground. We have no idea what's going on.
There might be fog that you can't see 2 yards in front of you with.
Yeah, and Washington State's had a really
That's when
nice
you need Randall
season.
Cunningham.
Yeah. Washington State's had a really nice season. They've won 7 games. They went on the road and knocked off Wisconsin, lost by a field goal to Oregon. But their last 3 games, all winners, but Stanford, Arizona State, and Arizona. The last time they played really anybody in Washington's zip code was Utah. They lost that one. They also lost to Oregon State. They also lost to USC. The trend here is their 4 losses are elite teams in the Pac-12.
Yeah, really, really good teams.
So Washington State is a very nice team. They're going to go to a bowl. I would hate to play this team in a bowl. So I think they'll get to 8 wins. I just think Washington is a pinch above their weight this year. And with that small of a spread, I'm going to take the Huskies.
Coach.
Yeah, the Huskies are playing for a lot right now, trying to get to the Pac-12 title game. It's a 1.5 point spread, so it's basically a pick 'em. So I'm going to take the Huskies here. I feel like this is an easy one.
Yeah, I'm with both you guys here. And the other place I'm at is I'm all over the over as well because, I think that both these teams have really potent offenses. Now, the weather obviously could play a factor.
Yeah, I was about to say with the weather in Martin Stadium.
Yeah, that's the one thing to worry about. So I think on game day, it turns out
it's the Palouse. It's the Palouse. I wouldn't do an over-under in October or September.
I will be 5 minutes before kickoff. I might be checking in on the local Doppler radar to see what's up. Before I place an over under on this one, but I think we're all on the Husky train here because they're really playing for something. They're going to get double-digit wins 1 year after the absolute debacle with Jimmy Lake. Are you kidding me? Like Kalen DeBoer, kudos to you, dude. Like you have done an awesome job. I am so excited for our award show though, because I think Coach of the Year this year in the country is the single toughest award to figure out.
This has been so doubly
obviously Brian Harsin.
This has been so doubly embarrassing for Jimmy Lake. I don't know if he'll ever get another job.
I mean, he's gonna have to be like a DB's coach at a group of 5 school at this point because it's gonna be a minute because he's taken mostly the same roster and turn them into what is pretty much guaranteed to be a double-digit win team. Okay, finally, our last rivalry of the week that we have to end with. I mean, it's the Colorado game of the week, or as I like to call it during rivalry week, the battle of the Pac-12 Johnny-come-latelys. Utah is a 30-point favorite at Colorado, over under 52.5. Utah, Utah has to win if they have any modicum of a shot to make it to the Pac-12 title game, Josh. So, we know they're playing for something. Yeah. Just how much are they going to want to beat down Colorado?
Yeah, so that's the thing. They are mathematically still alive. They have to win. The other games that hinge on things are Pac-12 after dark. So they have no benefit of, knowing what the outcome is. So they got to keep their foot to the pedal. And so I've got Colorado winning, or I've got Utah winning, obviously. I have them covering because they're going to blow them out because Colorado's awful. I also have it going over. And the reason I have it going over is here are the last few point totals given up by Colorado. 42, 42, 49, 55, 54. There's a very good chance Utah clears the over themselves.
Coach.
Ooh, I might cop out here and take the under.
I like that I just critiqued taking the over in Martin Stadium, and now I'm doing it in Boulder, where who knows what the weather is going to be there.
Yeah, the weather's going to suck, I think. So I'm going to take the under here.
Don't care. Colorado sucks more than the weather.
Yeah. Here's what I know. Colorado
I'm going to say Utah's going to win 33-3.
Well,
like that.
then that would be a push. So I'm taking Utah.
That's why I'm taking the under. That wouldn't be a push on the under.
Yeah, but it is a push on the spread. So I'm taking Utah. I'll look again. This will be a game day, a game time decision when it comes to an over under based on weather. But I mean, Utah's gonna smack them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the hit in our standings, but real life advice to our listeners: check the weather forecast, and then if it's clear enough for some points, take the over.
Yeah, really, what it boils down to in both these Pac-12 games here to end it. All right. Well, speaking of ending it, we've gone over tonight, gents. So we have got to end it for this evening. So until next week, when we will be talking about championship week and what happened. And, guys, what's also next week, Josh? What is the most morbidly exciting holiday we have in the entire college football schedule?
SEC championship?
Lou Holtz's birthday?
Black Monday.
Yeah, Lou Holtz's birthday.
So we will be. There will be a lot of coach firings and hirings. We will have. There will be a coaching carousel pod in a couple weeks from now. That's always like maybe the most fun pod that we do all year.
Brian Ferentz.
Brian Ferentz to Nebraska. We are. I don't know what we're doing, but we are going to make it happen.
Brian Ferentz to Incarnate Word. Because they need some good offense down there, I hear.
Yeah. Hey, just one final thing before we truly end it. A big salute to Miami of Ohio with their win against Ball State tonight. The winner of the game was guaranteed a spot in my favorite random early bowl. The Bahamas Bowl.
Oh, the Bahamas Bowl.
They get to go to the Bahamas.
That is.
Yes.
If you're not playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, that's the best bowl, or in the playoff, that is the best bowl to be in.
I want the Big Ten to have a tie-in to.
Are you kidding?
Bahamas Bowl.
But think about this. Think about this though. Do you know how good the Bahamas Bowl is? Because it's one of the first games too. You get bowl season done with early. You're home for the holidays. You've gotten all the practices out of the way. You've basically got an extra 2 weeks off.
Yes,
and you've been in
the freaking Bahamas
in the end of December when you've been in like the upper Midwest.
So, are you saying the Gasparilla Bowl does not hold a candle to the Bahamas Bowl?
Is that the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl? Yeah. That's pretty much what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Bahamas Bowl may be. Guys, I think I've just figured it out.
Here's my bowl rankings.
No. We are going to be the official podcast of the Bahamas Bowl, and they're going to bring us to live show from the Bahamas. I will do a MAC below. Who do they play? Conference USA?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, sure. I will do a MAC Conference USA show for 2 weeks straight if they are taking us to the Bahamas Bowl.
Here's my bowl rankings of games I would want.
SI, make it happen.
Let's hear it, Josh.
Number 1, the granddaddy of them all. Number 2, the Bahamas Bowl.
I've been to 3 Rose Bowls. I think the Bahamas Bowl might be number 1 for me.
The 3 greatest bowls.
I'm not gonna lie.
The Bahamas Bowl. 2, the Bahamas Bowl. 3, as you guessed it, the Bahamas Bowl.
There it is.
I mean, think about even a super prestigious bowl game, like
isn't it presented by Raising Cane's?
Where are you? Dallas
I
metro area. Yay!
I don't know who's sponsoring the Bahamas Bowl these days, but we can find this out and make it happen. This should only take a cursory Google search. No, if I'm not going to the Bahamas Bowl, though.
Hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl, I believe.
Are they lending me? Are we talking payday loans or house or some mortgages?
Title loans.
Title loans, okay.
Get your title back with Title Max.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Free jingles, apparently. So.
I actually, Coach, I don't really hate that. I don't think it's correct in terms of their business model Kidding. I don't think you get your title back, but hey, I am not the NBA. Actually, I don't think any of us are MBAs on this podcast. No, definitely not.
That's their jingle, isn't it? Get your title back with Title Max.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard a Title Max jingle. So here we are on Title Max jingles at the end of the 305th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. Gents, it's been a pleasure as always.
That's how far we've come, folks.
On behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, here in Nashville, Tennessee, with his amazing Pass Pro Shops shirt on, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in Chicago, Illinois, rocking the Hayden Fry
Heroes game.
Oh, thank God we did not talk about that. I'm Matt Perkins, saying so long, and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Speaking of another jingle, it's the best part of waking up. Folgers in
Heroes game.
It's the Heroes game.
Best part of waking up is soldiers in your cup.
We're gonna hit with a copyright infringement.